Beit Midrash. It's a Beit Midrash, and I hope I'm going to pronounce this correctly, in the village of Enugu. Yeah, okay, come on. It's my New York accent, come on. I would like to introduce not only a wonderful teacher, but a very dear friend of who knows how many years. And I'm really very thankful that he was willing to take his time and to join us as well. He's going to talk a little bit about the kind of looking forward to the approach of Hanukkah. But what I would like to just show one thing before we begin, you'll see this design over here where the cursor is moving. And this is our teacher today, Rabbi Trugman, so you can learn more about him. And as well, you'll be able to come here to see the content that he has already posted, which includes videos and PDF as well. So therefore, again, on your own time, if you wish to learn more about the teachings of the rabbi, they are all available here. So having said that, and not wasting any more time, Rabbi, I turn it over to you.
Okay, I just want to confirm I have 15 minutes from right now.
Fine, yes, please.
Oh, okay. Welcome, everyone. It is so exciting to be connected to people all over the world. Even though the internet has been around for a long time and teaching online, but especially these last 6 months, because of the worldwide pandemic, this idea of being able to connect to people all over the world is still exciting. So I welcome everyone. And it's a pleasure to be working with the People's Talmud. It's a phenomenal program. And obviously, because you're all hooked into here, so it means that you're finding it meaningful. And I bless you to be able to continue your learning and spiritual growing.
Amen.
So Rev Gedalia asked me to talk a little bit about the next major holiday in the Jewish calendar, which is Hanukkah. Now, it may seem that it's pretty far away. It's approximately 6 to 7 weeks from now. But there are many, many important connections to the Torah portion that we just read and this month that we're going through now. But I do want to mention something quite interesting, because it was Rabbi Gerfein who suggested this subject. It turns out that where I live is called the home of the Maccabees. It is the place where the whole revolt against the Greeks began, which culminated in the holiday of Hanukkah. So we live in a very, very historic place, and Hanukkah has a very, very soft spot in my heart because of where I've been living these last 45 years. So first I want to mention that before every Shabbat and holiday, we light candles. So lighting lights is a very, very important part of our tradition. Every Shabbat, the first thing we do, especially the women, is we light the Shabbos candles and we bring light into our lives, into our homes, into our consciousness. Every holiday we begin with light. And many other occasions like weddings,
So beautiful.
even some people light a candle every morning before they pray the morning service. But the only holiday that is totally central about light is Hanukkah. So that is what we're looking forward to. In another 6 or 7 weeks, we have the holiday of light. And one of the keys to understanding the holiday of light is it always comes at the darkest time of the year. It always comes near what's called the winter solstice, when the nights are the longest and the days are the shortest. And so symbolically, we are bringing light into the darkness. And this month, we're seeing it very, very graphically. Here in Israel, we ended summertime, daylight savings time last night. And now it's getting dark really early, very, very, very early. And as we get closer to Hanukkah, it gets more and more night and less day. So that's the energy. So Hanukkah is all about turning darkness into light. And there's a very, very deep connection to the Torah portion that we just read. We just read this Shabbat about Noah and the flood that basically destroyed the whole world. It rained for 40 days and 40 nights. And we should mention that according to tradition, it began about 9 days from now, on the 17th of this Hebrew month, the flood began, and the 40 days of rain ended during Hanukkah. Now, of course, it wasn't the holiday of Hanukkah then, but it's very, very symbolic that starting now, as I said, it gets darker and darker and darker. And historically, part of the darkness of this time is the judgment that led to a flood that overcame all of mankind. And interesting enough, it ended during Hanukkah. The 40 days and 40 nights of rain ended during Hanukkah. So that's another way of looking at bringing light into the darkness. Since we read the Parsha Noah, I want to relate to you an amazing midrash. I see that some of you are sitting in a Beit Midrash, and the word midrash, it means the symbolic, the symbolic, allegorical, metaphorical lessons of the Torah. So there's a midrash that says an amazing thing. If we read in the Torah, in the Bible, so after the rain subsided, after the rain ended, so Noah sent out a raven to see if it would find any dry land or a tree or something. He sent the raven, and the raven came back, and there was no place that it could rest, so it had to return to the ark. And then he sent a dove, a Yonah, and he sent it, and the dove came back with a little twig of an olive tree. Noah took this twig, and then a week later he sent the bird again, and this time the bird didn't return. So Noah understood that it had found dry land in which a bird can't fly forever. It had found trees or dry land. So the Midrash says, the story tells us that on this twig of olive, there were a number of olives. And Noah pressed the olives and he made oil. And he put it in a little jar. And this jar was handed down to his son, who handed it down to his son. And 12 generations later, it got into the hands of Jacob, the third of the patriarchs, Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. And Jacob handed this little bottle of oil down to his sons and to their sons, and it eventually made it into the temple in Jerusalem. The first temple was destroyed. It was rebuilt. And then in approximately 2,140 years ago, the Greeks took over the temple and they made it impure. And the Maccabees, that's why I mentioned, I lived in the home where the Maccabees lived. This is a historical fact. And they chased the Greeks away and they rededicated the temple, but they had no oil to light the menorah, the 7-branch candelabra. And it took a while to be able to make pure olive oil. But when they were getting ready to rededicate the temple, they found this bottle of pure oil. And with that, they lit the first light of Hanukkah. And a miracle occurred, and that oil was enough to light the menorah, the candelabra, for 8 days until they could make new pure oil. So here we see, it's an amazing story. It's an amazing story that at the time of Noah, which is occurring right now during this time period, he made this little bottle of oil, and it got handed down for literally thousands of years. And it was the oil that lit the lights of Hanukkah. So what are we supposed to learn from this story? Well, there are many things we could learn, but I think perhaps this applies to many of the people who are watching right now, is that the idea is no matter how far away one might be from the Torah, no matter how far away one might be from God, there's always a little bit of pure oil, which means a little point of pure holiness within the heart and the soul that can never be put out. And so Hanukkah represents this idea of no matter how dark it gets. If anyone's had the experience of walking into a dark room or a dark cave, and they had just one little candle, and they lit the candle, all of a sudden there's no more darkness. It might not be like the light of the sun, but it's no longer completely dark. So this little oil that Noah saved and handed down symbolizes that we can never be too far away to come back and connect ourselves to holy things, to the Torah, to Hashem, and to all of Israel. So I just want to end with one other idea, is that after we came out of Egypt and we were in the desert for 40 years, in the first year, we built a tabernacle, called it the Mishkan. And this tabernacle became the model for the temple in Jerusalem. And that Mishkan was actually finished during Hanukkah, what would later be called Hanukkah, that time of year. And we're told that this month is called the month of Cheshvan. And some people call it Mar Cheshvan. Mar means bitter. So what's bitter about this month? We're told that there are no holidays in this month. And this is coming, for many of you who know, last month, the month of Tishrei, was full of holidays. Rosh Hashanah, the New Year, Yom Kippur, the Day of Atonement, Sukkot, the time of our joy, and Simchat Torah, the most joyful day of dancing and singing with the Torah. And then all of a sudden, this month, there are no holidays. So some people call it's like a bitter month. But really, if you take the word Mar, it's made of two letters, a Mem and a Resh. And if you just turn them around, it spells Ram. Ram means high, like Avram, Avraham. It means the exalted, the high father. So this month, as we are heading into the darkness, this is a time to turn bitterness into exaltedness and not to get caught in the darkness. And the world, the last 6 months, because of this pandemic, which does not seem to be in most places subsiding, it has been spiritually a very dark time. So my blessing to all of us is that as in nature, the night is extending and darkness is extending, that we see that there's a light at the end of the tunnel, and that's called Hanukkah. And that we should know that no matter how dark it gets, no matter how far away we get, there's always the possibility to connect to light. So thank you very, very much. And I hope that in the future we'll have a chance to learn together more.
Thank you very, very much. Toda rabah.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, Rev Avram, you're more than welcome to stay, but if you want to go, we understand as well, because you have another
I'm
class.
actually teaching, I'm teaching another class in exactly 10 minutes.
Okay. So thank you then.
So much.
Okay, thank you all.
Bye.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye. All right. That was a real wonderful treat. I hope you enjoyed that as well. I just want to point out, although I thought we would have people here from China and Africa and Amsterdam, I do want to point out that one of my best friends in the whole world is actually on our class here from Florida. You can see him just walking. If you notice, when he was walking on the beaches of Florida, but now he's been walking for so long, he's in outer space. So hopefully he'll he'll make it back to Earth someday as well. Oh, there we go, back to Earth. All right, so what I would like to do just before we start our class, I want to show you, and I'm going to do this each time we have the class, I'm going to show you what I use to make the class, to build the class, because I want you to know the happiest day of my life will be when we call to make this class and the Beit Midrash says, Gedalia, get lost. We don't need this anymore. We can teach you. That's what I want to hear. I want to hear when I'm going to be calling your Beit Midrash and you're teaching me. So this is I'm only willing to teach for now, but that's not the goal. The goal is that you have to teach me, okay? So in the meantime, until we get there, I'm going to take back the screen one more time to just show you how we are going to build this class, or how the class was built. So once again, inside the People's Talmud website, let's see if I can just move this away. Okay, we come here under search. By the way, you can do this on your mobile phone. You don't need a computer. And here we have categories. So our class today is called How to Be Holy, but we spell it with a W. So it's W-H-O-L-L-Y, holy, complete, one. But we're going to get to that. But the class here means for a person to become a holy person, they have to be able to work on their personality. They have to work on their character. A holy person is not the way you look to other people. A holy person is the way that you look to God. And God sees inside of us. And therefore, God sees inside of us. God wants that holiness to be authentic, to be for real. This is why I always say, if you want to know how real you are, go alone in a room with nobody, just by yourself, and then see what your mind goes to. Because when your mind and you are alone, that's who you really are. And that's the person that you should love. That's the person that you should honor. And that's the person that you should take control of and make holy. So on the category side here, I use two sources. One of them is called negative character traits. These are the things that we'd like to fix. And inside here, you'll find things such as ego, arrogance, or a person who is a cheap state, or you have, even earlier, abusive behavior, anger, all kinds of being bitter, cynical, all these types of very negative character traits. The worst of them all is a disease called it's never enough. It's when a person can never be happy because they can never be satisfied, because whatever they have is never enough and they always want more. In contrast with this, however, you come a little further, you come to positive character traits. And in here, you find things like compassion and love. You find things like giving people the benefit of the doubt, or goodness, or recognizing good and appreciation, and so on and so on and so on and so on. And these are the things that we try to reinforce. And as we know, if you come into, let's say, respect and tolerance, it will immediately bring you into a source in the Talmud, of which there are 154 sources in the Talmud that talk about respect, tolerance, and honor. So that's kind of like the background there. That gives us a sense as to what the class is all about and what it's going to be built upon. Okay, so let's jump in. I was wondering, I'm talking now to the Beit Midrash for a minute, although if I can't really see anyone who's here from China because everyone has their screens blocked. That's okay. But I was wondering, though, if there are any children, because I know that you guys had some children in the back of the room. Would you?
Children sleeping now in China. 10
that's good. That's very good. Parents are very happy when children sleep. All right, but your children aren't sleeping.
Right here, our children that side. In the Beit Midrash, the children have been moved outside.
They moved outside. Okay, that's what I would have done if I was their age also. Who wants to be in a room with old people when you can go out and play? All right, that's fine. No problem. So I'll have to just kind of look at all of us as children of God in that case, so we can all still be children. But the problem is, the question we want to deal with is, what is the difference between holy, as H-O-L-Y, and being spiritually holy, which is W-H-O-L-L-Y. And there's a huge difference. So let's begin with a classic definition of the word holy in Judaism. The word in Hebrew is called kadosh. Kadosh means to sanctify. In the temple, there is I see one of the young kids has snuck back in there. I don't want to embarrass him, and he's busy writing, so I don't want to interfere. But if he ever makes it up closer to the camera, I did want to ask a question to hear what he had to say. But okay, no worries. So the word in Hebrew is kadosh, and kadosh means to sanctify. So this is why in the temple, you have a section of the temple which is called Kadosh, which means holy or sanctified. And as you go deeper in, you come to the supreme holiness, which is called Kodesh Kadoshim, which is called the Holy of Holies. And then you have the highest of all levels of holiness, which is so holy that it does not exist in this world. And that highest level of holiness is actually taught to us by the prophet Isaiah, Ishayahu, and it's a term which we use in our prayers, which I'll explain in a minute how we use it. And the term is Kadosh, Kadosh, Kadosh. We've used the holy word 3 times in a row. And the reason that we do is because in heaven, there are 2 primary divisions of angels, which in simple form, one of them is responsible for bringing heavenly energy down into this world, which is associated with water, because water always goes down. And the other angels are responsible for lifting the holiness out of this world up to heaven, and that is fire, because fire always burns upwards. So we make sacrifices, we burn on fire on the altar, and that fire goes up to heaven, and the water, the rain, which gives life, comes down from heaven. And these are the very, very oversimplified aspect of the relationship of these 2 groups of angels. And what they wish to do is unify, to bring fire and water together. Now you try it. You try to make a fire and put some water in it, or you try to fill up a sink with water and put some fire inside. And if you could do that, I'll be on the next plane over there, and we're going to write a patent, and we're going to take it straight to Wall Street, and we're going to get funding. But if you can't do it, don't worry about it. So the point is, where do you see fire and water come together? In heaven. Because the word for heaven in Hebrew, in the holy language, is Shemayim. And the word Shemayim is Esh and Mayim, fire and water joined together. So the miracle of heaven is the ultimate peace. That things which cannot exist together in this world can live perfectly together in heaven. And so the angels of fire and the angels of water, if you will, wish to bring this unity together. However, God will not let them do it. God will say, the only way you're going to be able to do that is if people on earth find unity first. So that's why in our prayers, when we say these words, Kadosh, 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 the 3 levels of holiness, it's only at that moment that the angels are then allowed to say their prayers. So the angels are forced to wait until we unify the spiritual world and the physical world. And when we understand the function of unity of spiritual and physical, we will understand personal happiness of our soul and our body, right? Our soul has one desire and our bodies have other desires. And the challenge is to bring the soul and the body together, just like the soul, which is fire, and the body, which is water. 98% of your body is water. To bring these things together in a state of holiness. And this idea of holiness then tells us that holiness is a little different than this idea of merely sanctifying something. For example, there's another place where the word holiness is used, and that is called marriage. In a Jewish marriage, there are 2 stages that occur. The first stage in Hebrew is called Kiddushin. Kiddushin means to be engaged. But if you hear the word Kadosh is in Kiddushin, it means to sanctify. What is the first step of a Jewish marriage? It means that this man and this woman are now no longer available to any other man or to any other woman. They have sanctified their lives to be together. However, they cannot come together until the second stage of the marriage, which is called nisuyin. And nisuyin is where we have a canopy that the man or the bride and the groom stand under the canopy, because there they become one. And as you remember, I hope, from a few weeks ago when we were learning about creation, we pointed out that in the Hebrew, when God called man, called Adam, he was not talking about the M-A-L-E. He wasn't talking about the gever. He wasn't talking about the male man. He was saying that the title human, man, is only given to male and female as one. And this we pointed out that in the Zohar, every soul has some male and some female. It's okay to have woman energy in a man, and it's okay to have man energy in the woman, because without each of us having energy of each other, we would not be able to communicate or to relate to each other. However, what happens in a marriage is the man gets to experience the beauty of being a woman through his wife. And the woman has the opportunity to feel and become a man through her husband, because now they are one. So this holiness is the sanctity of man and woman, of fire and water, of spiritual and physical, all learning to live together. Therefore, the challenge of being a holy person or a spiritual person is not to push away the physical world, not to say, oh, I'm so holy, I'm so spiritual, I'm not involved in the physical world. It's just the opposite. It's to go deep into the physical world. I'm going to digress for a minute. We have in the Bible, in the Jewish tradition, there are, which is natural, there are people, all of us maybe, at some time where we feel that we need to push away from the physical world because we're not dealing with it correctly, or it's just overwhelming us, or whatever it is, we're in pain. So we take what's called a vow, and the vow is, I push myself away from the physical world. In that word, for such a person, and it could be a man or a woman, in Hebrew, it's called a Nazir. This is where the Christians have the term Jesus of Nazareth, because the word Nazareth is from the word Nazir. That's all it means, that he was from a city of people called the Pirushim, people who pushed away the physical world in order to allow their spirituality to become more evolved. However, even though that may be a necessary step in a process of growing, the Torah calls it a sin. And the Torah says that somebody who takes the vow of becoming a Nazir has to bring at the end of the vow a sin offering. Now, why? What sin did they do? Did they violate Shabbat? Did they kill somebody? What sin did they do? Why are they bringing a sin offering? And the answer is, the sin was to reject the physical world. Because God creates the physical world. There is godliness inside everything. In fact, I'll show you this on a very deep idea, which is the opposite of being pure, is being impure. What's the Hebrew word or the holy language word for impure? It is tameh. Tameh is the word for impure. Now, what does this strange word tameh mean? It comes from the word atum. Atum means to be hidden. So what it means is when something is impure, if you can open it up, inside is holiness. In other words, there is no such thing as impure. I mean, we have to live and be careful about things which are impure. But on a deeper level, which we may not be able to access, there really is no such thing, because there is only revealed and hidden. So the impure is only hidden purity. It exists, but it exists inside. We have to be able to take off the shell. And this is the platform of the whole life we live in this world. This world is called, and I think I've mentioned this before, the world in Hebrew is called olam. When we make a blessing, we say, Baruch atah Hashem Elokeinu, Melech haolam, King, Melech, King, haolam, of the world. But what does that mean, King of the world? The word haolam means hidden. The whole world that God created hides God. Life is hide and go seek. God hides, and our job is to find God everywhere and in everything. But it gets more complicated, because the Torah tells us that not only did God hide the world, okay, if you could follow this, I could see little pieces of your brain coming out of your ears as you get hold of this idea, okay? So hold on. I know you can do this. This will, I promise you, if you can get this, it will change your life forever. Hopefully for the best, but no guarantee. But maybe, okay? Not only does God hide from us, but there's a second level. God hides from us the fact that God hides. Let's do it again. It would be one thing if God hides, but it's more complicated. God hides the fact that God is hiding. So therefore, 90% of the world have no idea that God is even here hiding, because the fact that God is hiding is also hidden. So therefore, it requires a lot of spiritual strength to be able to break that wall of darkness and to be able to begin to see what is really going on. Because you know what? As I always like to say, when we leave this world after 120 years, all of a sudden we pop out of this body and we go up before God. I always say, you know what the first thing the soul is going to say when it goes upstairs? What the what? Right? Because at that point, nothing's hidden. So it's like, what? Right? It's just all there. Everything, we had no idea what's here. And now all of a sudden we see everything. In fact, in Jewish literature, it talks about what happens when a person dies. And since probably all of us, or maybe most of us, might die someday, maybe we should take a second to have a little tour of what the Zohar talks about. So I'm going to just put on my little tour. Okay, on your left, you will notice. Okay, so we're going to take a little tour of what it's like when we are out of our lives and die. So the first thing that happens when a person dies is they go into shock. They can't believe it. And what they would do is they will run over to a mirror to see themselves. And then they'll be in front of the mirror and there'll be nobody there. This is why in Jewish tradition, at a funeral and the 7 days of mourning, we put sheets over all of the mirrors. We cover reflection. We do not have anything that would allow the soul to be horrified by looking in the mirror and they're not there. So that's the first thing. So the first thing is the soul is freaked out, and then it goes to its home, to wherever it was living. Now, just imagine this. You know, you're 120 years old, and now you've died, and you come home to your home, and there's your family, and they're breaking out the whiskey, and they're drinking the wine, and they're saying, hey, where did the old man leave his money? And everybody's shooting guns, and you would be really bummed out, right? But if you come into the home and everybody's sitting on the floor and they're crying and they're talking about how much they loved you, and they talk about how much they miss you, and they talk about why weren't they nicer to you while you were still here, those are things that comfort the soul. That happens for 7 days. After the 7 days, the soul begins to float. And the person or the soul is aware of this. So it might try to hold on to a piece of furniture, doesn't help. Might try to hold on to the ceiling, goes right through the ceiling. Try to hold on to the chimney or the roof, doesn't matter. The feet go up and it goes away. And then all of a sudden it's like sees the outline of Africa and the Atlantic Ocean. And now it's getting really far away and it sees, oh, that one, that's Earth. And then all of a sudden it's even farther away. And it's like, wait, that's my sun. And then all of a sudden it's really far away. And it gets to the point where even if it could somehow swim back, it wouldn't even know how to find our planet anymore. At that moment, that's called the moment of acceptance. At that moment, the soul, which was watching the earth as it moved away, turns around and faces God. And the Zohar says that the first thing the soul hears is Ani Hashem, I am God. And most of us will be shocked at that moment because of the biblical story of when Joseph had become the viceroy of Egypt and his brothers did not know who he was. And all of a sudden he says, Ani Yosef, I am Joseph. They couldn't talk. They were in shock with that conflict with reality. However, what happens at that moment is God brings a most beautiful angel. And as this angel gets closer, you start to look at this angel and you realize, oh my gosh, that's me. You see your face on the angel. You go, whoa, that's me. And this angel is gorgeous and brilliant and shining and almost difficult to look at. And God, all excited, says, yes, you see this angel? When I created you, this is what I thought you could be. This is what I gave you the ability to be. You could have been one of my angels on earth, not a hell's angel, a heaven's angel on earth. And God shows you what you could have been. All of a sudden, God says, but let's leave that. Let's take a look and see, what did you do with what I gave you? What did you make yourself? This is what I knew you could have been, but I don't know. Let's see what you really did. Who are you? God asks. Who are you, right? Who am I? Who are we? It's a question we should ask ourselves every day. Why am I on this planet? Just to eat another meal? Just to take somebody else's money? Just to hurt somebody? Just to make somebody else feel bad? You need to be alive for that? So then what happens is the Jewish definition of hell is the difference between what God wanted me to be and what I became. That difference, the pain of these two coming back together again, is hell. The blessing of a holy person coming back together again is pleasure beyond comprehension, because it's fulfillment, it's oneness, it's being everything you knew you could really be. Even if nobody else around you knows it, doesn't matter. Doesn't matter. It just matters that you know it, because if you know it, then God knows it, and that's all that matters. I'm sure if you really are, everyone will know it as well, because it just shines. But that's the challenge. And this is hinted at Why in the Bible does it say Abraham, Abraham? Why does it say many different names? It says the name Shmuel, Shmuel. Why does it say the name of the holy people twice? Because it means that the name of that person in heaven, the angel, and the way the person became in this earth, Abraham is Abraham. It's the same person. There's no difference. That's a holy person. A holy person means that you live your potential, that you live in the physical world, and you take a syringe, a needle, and you inoculate the physical with holiness to remove the shells that make us think that the hidden is hidden. There's nothing hidden. I'll show you an example. There was a great Hasidic rabbi known as the Belzer Rebbe. And he said that a religious and non-religious person are as far away as east to west. Okay. When I lived in New York, actually it wasn't so far because you had the east side and then you just walked across Central Park and you had the west side. But in general, east and west are the farthest away, or are they? How far away is east and west? Remember the other day we asked how far is the end of the universe, and we answered the tip of your longest finger because the universe is infinite. It's just a question of how far can we reach into the universe. So how far is east and west in miles or meters or whatever you use to measure distance? How far is east to west? So here's an incredible answer. The difference between east and west is simply turn around. If you're facing east, just turn around, and now you're facing west. They're not far at all. Think about when you draw a circle. When you begin the circle and you draw it, the very farthest point away from where you began is right next to the beginning. And the last point of the circle is the furthest point from the beginning, and yet it's also the closest to the beginning. So therefore, if a person feels that they have, God forbid, failed as a human being and have lost their spiritual understanding, or they haven't done the things that really they wish they had been a better person, it's okay. Just turn around. Because here's another question. People refer to non-religious people as people who are far from God. Really? Really? How could you be far? Where could you be, except for maybe New Jersey? Where could you be that's called far from God? That was a line, by the way, from a famous Woody Allen movie. I don't know if you guys ever watched Woody Allen movies, but there was one scene where he and this girl are good, don't. But I'll tell you anyhow. So they're running from the police, and they have a car, and they're trying to push the car off the cliff so the police won't find them. And, you hear the sirens, the police are coming. But in the middle, they go into a philosophical question. And the woman says to Woody, "Do you believe in God?" And Woody has this, pushing the car. And he says, "Yes, I believe in a force that controls the entire universe except New Jersey." So I guess you have to be in New Jersey to know what that means. But anyhow, on a spiritual level, how and where could you be that's far from God? If God is everywhere, even in hell, where are you far from God? So what does that mean to be far from God? There's nowhere you can be that's far from God. So the answer is, it's just a state of mind. That's the only place you're far from God, in your mind. So it's one turn of the dial from east to west. That's all it is. If a person lines up with God, then they are allowing the blessings of heaven to go through them and into this world. And if they are turned away from God, it's like, imagine you have water pouring and you bring a bucket. With a bucket, you can catch the water. But if you turn the bucket upside down, the water just splashes off to the side. So if you open up our heads and allow the blessings to come into our wisdom, and from our wisdom into our actions, we become a tunnel that captures the blessing and lets it come into our lives. And if we don't, we block it because we are arrogant or have ego blocks and problems, then that blessing falls to the side. But the rectification is something that's very easy, and it's within us. However, for that to happen, it requires two basic fundamental personality tools. One is to be humble. Now, the word humble is a very dangerous word because a person can be a freaking egomaniac acting humble. Person can like be so humble that you can get sick from how humble they are, right? Because they are really using their ego to show you, look how humble I am. On the other hand, somebody who's really humble also does not mean that they're weak. A humble person does not mean that they allow people to push them around. A humble person does not tolerate evil. If a humble person sees somebody doing something wrong, they take action. They're not passive. They don't just leave it to God because God actually left it to you. So humble does not mean weak. Humble does not mean meek. Humble means honest. And I'll tell you, only because I'm hoping that all of our classes you will fall in love with the Talmud. So I'll tell you a Talmud story that blew my mind about humble. So the Gemara Talmud is talking about different people. When they died, this particular person was known to be so great in a particular something. They said, oh my gosh, now that that person is gone, there's no more, I don't know, let's say wisdom in the world. So then one particular person who was truly known as the humblest person of his generation died. And the rabbis, the wise men, all got together and they started to say, now that Rabbi so-and-so is gone, who is the most humble person today? Who is that humble person? And so they all start looking around the room, trying to find out, oh, is that the humble person? Is that the humble person? How about that person? That person the humble person? And all of a sudden, one rabbi jumps up and he yells out, I found him. I found the most humble person in the room. It's me. And what's even wilder is all the rabbis agreed. They said, you're right. You're right. You are the most humble person in the world today. And what a wild story. It's wild because he says, yeah, I found him. It's me. I'm the most humble. And it's even more wild that everyone agreed with him. They didn't just say, I go back to sleep. They agreed. What is this? So this, if we understand this, we will understand what is real humbleness. When he pointed to himself, he did not know he was pointing at himself. He thought he was pointing at another person. In other words, he didn't look at this is me. He just saw this person and said, oh, this guy is really humble. It just happened to be him. But he was so able to detach himself from himself because he was so humble. That's how he was able to appreciate his humility and it being authentic. And we know that Moses became the greatest of all. Never once did it talk about how smart he is. Never once did he talk about how clever he was, how rich he was, how charisma he was. All the Torah tells us is how humble he was. Now, Moshe led wars. Moshe killed giants. Moshe destroyed Egypt. Moshe went for 120 days without eating or drinking. Try that for 10 days. 120 days, no eating, no drinking, 3 times up on Mount Sinai. So Why is this nature of being humble the key to becoming holy? Because when we are humble, we realize that our superpowers, and yeah, superpowers, as I said many times in this class, the biggest problem we have in our life is us, because we don't understand how powerful we are. We don't have a clue how powerful we are. And if we would just invest the energy and the love in ourselves and open up those doors, the power is beyond words. But to be able to find that power has to be through really being authentic, humble, because then we see the power as a gift from God. And this is actually hinted at the way we look at our hands. On the one hand, we say, no pun intended, but on the one hand, we say, that you should, we pray to God, open your hands and allow my hands to be your hands in this world, so that what I do with my hands are actually godly actions in this world. And on the other side of it is a horrible expression, which is koyach b'yadi atzmi. The power is in my hand. That when I do something, I think I did it, my power. And that is horrible, horrible, horrible mistake. Horrible mistake. I mean, that's part of the darkness and the hiddenness that we live in, is that such a mistake could actually exist. But that's the mistake we have, because it's not our power. It's a gift which comes from God. So therefore, when a person becomes involved in a humble approach to spirituality, they realize another thing. I'm going to illustrate this from a story, which I hope I'll do well. I doubt it, but I hope I'll do well. So there's a story. Okay, we're going in the Wayback Machine. 1878. Oh, 1879. There we go. So we go back to Prague, 1879, or maybe a little later. Let's move it up a bit. 1923. Better. Okay. So we're there, and there are three students arguing over whose rabbi, teacher, is greater than the other one. I mean, just to begin with, it's a stupid thing to do, but they're doing it. And one guy says, oh, I'll tell you something. My rabbi is so great that once he was walking through the forest and he came to a river and he couldn't cross the river, and he took, what if I have it here? A minute? Yeah. He took his prayer belt out. See, all Jews are really black belts. So he took his prayer belt out and he threw it on the water, and he walked across the string on the water. That's how great he is. And another guy said, that's nothing. My rabbi is way greater than that. My rabbi is so great that once, like the story in the Talmud, there was no rain, and he drew a circle, and he said to God, I will not leave this circle until the rain comes. And the rain came. And the third guy says, that's nothing. My rabbi is so holy that whatever he says, God will do. He says this, God does it. He says that, God does it. And as they're arguing, a yeshiva guy, just a regular guy, learns in yeshiva, learns in the Beit Midrash, comes along and he hears this whole argument. And he says, I want to tell you something, gentlemen. My rabbi is holier than all three of your great rebbes. And they're like, what are you talking about? He said, yeah. You want to know how holy my teacher is? He is so holy, whatever God says, he does.
Wow.
That's holy. Oh, I delivered. All right. Baruch Hashem. That's holy. It's not holy to learn Kabbalah and magic and all of these things unless you're ready for it. That's not holy. What's holy is to learn how to do kindness, how to help somebody who needs your help, how to take time to make sure your mom and your dad are okay, how to really look at your children, not for what you want them to be, but who are they? Who are these little angels that were given to you as a gift? And how, as you as a parent, can you pour the right water on their head and give them the right amount of sunlight and all the things that will make them grow? And if one kid wants to play sports and another kid wants to be science, it's fine, because we're all different. We have to understand what is each person and make them holy. So that's what real holiness is. It's about listening to what God wants us to do and do it. I'll share with you something on a very, very deep level that I just hope my friend Shmuel won't call me after the class and yell at me about. But there is an idea on a very, very deep level. But I think it's extremely important. One of the most important names of God is spelt with 4 letters of the letters Yud and Hey and Vav and Hey. This is which we do not pronounce that name. Bad news to pronounce that name. Okay. However, that's the way it's spelt. These are the 4 letters, and these are the 4 letters that stand behind creation. They are the combinations in each. Look, if you have, let's do a little math. You have 4 numbers, but 2 of them are the same. So for example, you have 1, 1, 2, 3. So you have 4 numbers, but this is a 1 and a 1, and this is a 2 and a 3. So if it was 1, 2, 3, 4, so you could combine them in 16 different ways. 4 times 4 is 16. But if you have 2, which are the same, then you have 3. In other words, 1, 2, 3 times 4, which is 12. So in the letters of God's name, you have the letter Hey twice. So therefore you have 3 letters, but there are 4 of them. So 3 times 4 is 12. That's how you combine each one of the names of God in a different order. These combinations are the power behind the 12 months of the year. Each one is influenced by a different order of these names. But the influence comes even deeper. And that is an idea as follows. That when I show you something, I am also not showing you something. When I show you this, I am not showing you this. Right? But this and this make up what's called my hand. So when I show you this, I'm actually hiding this. And when I show you this, I'm hiding this. Okay? So when you have a letter in the Torah, which is a letter that you see, at the same time, there's a side of that letter which is hidden from you. And it works as follows. If you start with the very first letter in Hebrew, which is Aleph, so if this is the Aleph, this side of the Aleph is the very last letter, the Tuf. If you see the next letter, which is Bet, then this side is the second to last letter, which is Shin. And therefore it's called At Bash. Aleph Tuf, Bet Shin. At Bash. And you can go all the way down the Hebrew alphabet like this, and there's a lot of magic there, which we're not going to go into. But let's take one example. If you have 2 Hebrew letters, one is the middle letter of the Hebrew alphabet, which is Mem. Mem. And you have another Hebrew letter, which is the Hebrew letter Tzadi. Mem Tzadi. These 2 letters appear in 2 words in Hebrew. One is called matzah, which is the bread, a flat bread that we eat on Passover. If you've never eaten it and you want to have an idea of what it tastes like, have a piece of cardboard to get you right into the right mindset. However, there's another word which we use on Passover called chametz. Chametz is leavened bread, like cake or like regular bread. So you have matzah and you have chametz. On Passover, it is a commandment to eat matzah, and God forbid a person who eats chametz on Passover will have their soul cut out of the universe. Yet, both of these words have these two letters, mem, tzadi. The only difference between the two words is that this one, matzah, has a hey, and this one has a chet. Now, if you look at the Hebrew letters, hey and chet, they almost look like the exact same thing, except on the hey, there's a little window at the top. The chet is a line and two lines. The hey is a line and a short line that leaves a little window. So the flat matzah, which has the little window, is because it's humble. The chametz is filled with itself. So all of its energy simply causes the bread to rise. Yeast, it causes it to rise, and that's arrogance. Now watch this. Why, however, does the bread and the matzah have those two letters? Because God is in everything. If you take these two letters, mem and sadi, and you flip them over, the letter mem on the other side is the letter yud. The letter tzadi, if you flip it over, is the letter hey. So therefore, the letters mem and tzadi are really the letters of God's name of yud and hey. When you look at the word mitzvah in Hebrew, it is spelled mem, tzadi, these two letters again, vav, hey. Now, vav and hey are just like the last two letters of God's name. But the first two letters seem to be hidden. They are mem, tzadi. What does this teach us? It teaches us that in the word mitzvah, which is the commandments of God, is God. So when you actually begin to take holiness and you do it in your body, you do actions with your body of holiness, what are you doing? You are revealing God, created in the image of God. You are revealing it by opening up that holiness that's inside of you. So this is why, to conclude, the Jewish approach to spirituality is not to abstain from marriage or not to remove themselves from society. You know, a lot of times in certain spiritual studies of other people in the world, all of whom should be blessed and all of whom are in their own way seeking God, but they have holy centers far away from society. They go to the mountains or they go far away from other people. They call them places of retreat. But for the Jew, the Beit Midrash was always in the middle of the marketplace. Because in the middle of the marketplace, one guy says, hey, you charged me too much money for those tomatoes. And the other guy says, no, I didn't. That's a fair price. And what do? They would walk immediately into the Beit Midrash. And the Beit Midrash would be filled with wise people. And these two people who were arguing as to whether or not the price of tomatoes were fair would say, what is God's will about this issue? And hopefully the elevated, spiritual, knowledgeable people in the Beit Midrash would say, well, look, this is the law. Da-da-da, da-da-da, da-da-da. This is the law. So now, what could have broken out into two people punching each other over a stupid issue over the price of tomatoes has now become a link to holiness, where they took their very seemingly small, mundane argument and they actually elevated it like an offering to God to find out what would God's interest and will be in this. right there in the marketplace. And this is why in Judaism, work is a holy thing. When a person works, even no matter what they do in their job, this is a moment to be holy. I mean, I hope what I'm going to share with you, I hope won't get the married men in trouble, because I know it could. But a lot of times, maybe it's different in Nigeria, but a lot of times, especially in Orthodox Jewish homes, the man likes to feel like he's the king of the home, like he's the big scholar. And when he's sitting at the table on Shabbat and he has his children, he has his guests, he's the one who's spewing the wisdom. And the woman, God bless her, she's the one changing the dishes. She's the one in the kitchen bringing out the next food. And the husband wouldn't think of getting up and carrying a dish from the table to the sink. He's the big Torah guy. No, he ain't the big Torah guy. He's got it really, really wrong. If he was a Torah guy, he would realize that he doesn't have a home. He has a temple. And every vessel in the temple is holy. And the Kohanim, the priests, have to know how to use these vessels and how to care for them and how to clean them and how to organize them and how to make sure that everything is together. So for a husband to go in the kitchen and to wash the dishes is a priest serving in the temple. And I'm sorry, guys, I didn't mean to really break that to you, and I hope you're not going to get a lot of lip from your wives, but that's what it is. That's what it is. And your wife is the priestess. She's the princess. She's the princess of the temple. So what an amazing honor you have to be able to be a Kohen, to be a priest and serve in the temple. That requires a humble attitude. It also requires a focus on being appreciative of what we have, because that was the second character to become holy, is to be humble and to be appreciate everything. Don't take anything for granted, because it could be taken away in a minute. And if it's still with you, it's because God's still giving it to you. So say thank you for it. Thank you from your soul. Thank you from your mouth. Thank you to your wife. Thank you to your friend. Hey, thank you for being my friend. When was the last time you said that? You might feel it. You might think it, but say it. Say, hey, you know what? I know that we've been buddies for 25 years. I just want to tell you, I think it's great that we've been buddies for 25 years. Thank you. Thank you for being you. That's another great thing you can say to somebody. Not just thank you for what you did, but why not go over to somebody without any judgment, not looking down our nose at another person, God forbid, but just go over to another person and look, I just want to tell you something. I just want to make sure that you know, thank you for being you. That's it. You don't have to be like me. I don't have to be like you. We might not even share the same thing. You might like vanilla ice cream. I might like strawberry ice cream. So what? Doesn't matter. Thank you for being you. And that's the kind of holiness that takes spiritual and brings it down into the practical physical world. And so here's the last thing. I know I said that 10 times ago. My wife always tells me, who some of you met when we first began, because the Finns, as you know, she's from Finland. The Finns have these amazing expressions, which we often love. So she said that the difference between the Finnish people and Jews are that the Jews say goodbye 100 times and they still don't leave, where the Finns don't even say goodbye. They just get up and walk out the door. So I know I said this is the last point 10 times. What can I do? I'm Jewish. So here's the last point, and I think it's really important. A lot of times when we become closer to God and we start putting together things, and by the way, I'm right now in the middle of trying to organize a big box of talisim that we hope will get ready and ship over to you from New York. And when that happens, I'll need to get from you. Oh, don't do that. When that happens, we'll have to get the correct address and so on. Anyhow, but I just want to say that when we do this, we start to feel in a way, well, you know what? I'm close with God now. So everything is going to be wonderful. Think about Abraham. God says to Abraham, leave your home. Okay, right, I know. He said come to Israel, but we're not going to get to there right now. Leave your home and leave everything, leave your friends, leave your family, and come to where I'm going to bring you. And he gets to Israel, although it was only called Canaan in those days. And he says, look at this land. I'm going to give it to your children. And I got to tell you something. As one of his children, it's pretty amazing to be sitting here now, 3,000 years later in Jerusalem, telling you about my great, 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 great grandfather who God promised this land. That's kind of wild. It's like happening now. However, in his life, what's the next thing after he got to Israel? There was no food. There was a famine, and he had to go down to Egypt. Now think about how you would feel. You are not just like some bozo rabbi with a yarmulke comes along and tells you something. Forget him. But you actually hear God's voice. Now, assuming you're not in a mental institution the next day, you really hear God's voice. And God tells you something. And God promises you something. What could be more amazing than that? And now imagine all of a sudden what appears to you as the promise didn't come true. You got to the land and it's not true. Now all of a sudden there's a famine. It's not true. You might not say I was lied to, but you would feel heartbroken. No, not if you're Abraham. If you're Abraham, you don't feel heartbroken at all. You just continue going straight. Whatever it is that you have to do, you just do it. And you know that God works in God's mysterious ways. And God's not going to ask me to be God. He's going to ask me just to be Abraham and to do what I have to do. So therefore, I say that to you. As you grow in spiritual growth, do not be disappointed if things don't seem to become magical paradise. All they are is a test to see how much you really want to persevere, how strong you are, to see how great you are, that you come into such difficult situations and you can go into Auschwitz and you can go into the Holocaust and nothing can kill you. Think about that. What other people in the world have walked through the doors of Auschwitz and come out 30 years later in their homeland 3,000 years ago? What's going on? Because you cannot die. That's our class last week, so I don't want to go back to that. But once you realize that, so then you can live and live, be humble, be loving, be graceful, be appreciative. And all those things will help us to become the angels that, imagine this, now, after 120 years, when you go upstairs and there's that angel, instead of going, whoa, what the, this angel goes, wow, what the. The angel freaks out because now the angel looks at you and says, you know what? You're greater than an angel because I'm just an angel, but you're a human. I know what you suffer. I know how hard it was. And you became greater than me. As a human, you became spiritual. That's greater than an angel. And that becomes the challenge. That challenge, when that comes together, is the challenge that we have this opportunity for. So I thank you all very much. I'm going to try to think about who we can get for our guest speaker, hopefully for next week. And then we will all get back together again, God willing. All right.
Thank you,
Bye, everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye-bye. Bye-bye. From both east and west ends of the world. Bye-bye for now.
Yeah. Bye.
Bye. Litro.